Campaign 92. CBS News coverage of the Democratic National Convention continues. Live from Madison Square Garden in New York City, here again is Dan Rather.
And on the floor of the Democratic National Convention, the first faint indication that these Democrats, rightly or wrongly, are beginning to believe that they smell a win in November. Sometimes it goes that way at conventions. You begin to sort of feel it and smell it. Sometimes it's actually there, sometimes it isn't. We'll see as time goes along. Right now, let's go to Ed Bradley, who's in the Pennsylvania delegation with a self-described one-time radical. He's now for Bill Clinton. Ed, what's your story?
Dan, I'm with a man who I think represents much of the change that you've seen in the Democratic Party over the last 10, 15, 20 years. John Street, when I met him in the early 70s, was a classic outsider, along with his brother Milton, a radical, a demonstrator, a protester. He was arrested how many times?
Many times.
Many times. Today, he's president of the city council in Philadelphia. What do you think of this ticket?
Well, I think that this ticket is going to sell. What people are concerned about what's happening in this country. The cities are in terrible, terrible problems. In the city of Philadelphia, we are totally unable to cope with the problems that we have, drugs and crime and the need for health care and the like. And we know that we're going to have to do something in Washington to solve those problems. And I think that this convention and the way the Clinton people and the National Committee have handled it is going to give us a leg up on the November election. And I think that people are really going to be enthusiastic that there can really be some change.
Some people have said that this was a ticket that was aiming more at the suburbs than people in the cities. You agree, disagree?
Well, I really can't tell you why they put the ticket together the way they did. I mean, Clinton, I think, had a right to pick the person with whom he was going to feel most comfortable. But this business of regionalism hasn't ever worked for us in the last several years campaigns, and I don't know why there's any reason we should stick to it now.
One quick question, John. You enthusiastic about this ticket?
Oh, yeah. I'm enthusiastic about the ticket. I'm enthusiastic about the party. And I'm enthusiastic about the way this convention has been run and the hope that it gives us for November.
Thank you very much. Dan, back to you.
Ed Bradley, thanks. And from the floor of the convention, we're going to try something a little new here, and let's carry on a conversation with the former governor of Massachusetts, one-time candidate for president of the United States, Michael Dukakis, and his lovely wife, Kitty Dukakis, who's some distance from us, up a little closer to the rafters. Thank you very much for being with us, Governor, and Mrs. Dukakis.
Thanks for having us, Dan.
Governor Dukakis, you got to have some regret that being nominated here tonight was Bill Clinton and not Michael Dukakis being nominated for a second term.
I don't have any regrets about Bill Clinton being nominated. I've known him for 15 years, Dan. He's one of the best people I've ever served with in public life. Would I like to be here as a candidate for re-election? Sure I would, but it didn't happen. We've got a great ticket. We've got a great opportunity here to provide this country with new leadership, and I'm as enthusiastic as anybody in this hall and a lot of people outside about this ticket. It's been a great convention, and they're going to go out of here with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of energy, and lots of opportunity to win this thing.
And Governor, there is some indication now that Bill Clinton may actually come out of this convention leading in the polls, as you did coming out of Atlanta in 1988. What are the dangers for him if he walks out of here with momentum going his way and even leading in the polls?
Dan, I respect you, and I respect all of the folks in the national media. I have one urgent request. Stop taking polls. They don't mean anything at this point. The only thing these polls tell us is that about 75% of the American people want a new president. And Bill Clinton and Al Gore now have to go out across this country and persuade an angry, frustrated, but always hopeful electorate that they are the people to provide this country with the leadership we need. But these polls aren't worth the powder to blow them to hell, to tell you the truth at this point. What's important now is for us to focus on issues, for them to go out there across the country and talk about their vision for this country. If they do that, they're going to win, and I think they're going to win decisively.
Mrs. Dukakis, if I can bring you into this for a moment. Obviously, in fact, Governor Clinton has confirmed the decision was made some time ago to try to lower the profile and change the direction of Mrs. Clinton's campaigning. You think that was a mistake?
Well, I think that you have to make adjustments in campaigns, and I've known Hillary, as I've known Bill Clinton, for close to 15 years. She is an extraordinary woman with wonderful qualities. She will be a great First Lady. And I think she is doing what spouses need to do in her position. She is making adjustments, and I think that's just fine. I think she has been a model for people all over this country and will continue to be. I applaud all of her efforts, and I just think she will be a terrific First Lady of this country. She is a woman of the 90s.
Governor Dukakis, very quickly, this ticket obviously has a lot of Southern comfort in it. Does it have a chance to carry the big industrial northeastern states it must if Bill Clinton's to be elected?
I think so, Dan. You know, for one thing, Al Gore is a national figure in his own right. Bill Clinton now is known across this country. And I think the advantages of regional balance have been exaggerated. Sure. I think it was an extra bonus for me to pick a Lloyd Bentsen who happened to come from Texas, but frankly, if he'd come from Montana, I would have picked him. If he'd come from Mississippi, I would have picked him. I picked him because he could be a great president if called upon to do so, and would have been a very strong and good vice president. And knowing Bill Clinton as I do, I know that's exactly why he picked Al Gore. I think Al Gore will be tremendously helpful to this ticket in the West because of environmental leadership. I think he's going to have great appeal for us in the Northeast because he's done so much in the area of new technologies and competitive industries and these kinds of things. So I think he provides some very real national balance, and the fact that these two candidates happen to come from Arkansas and Tennessee, I think is really irrelevant in a broad national sense. They're going to be a good national ticket.
Governor Dukakis, Mrs. Dukakis, thank you very much for being with us. Our CBS News coverage from the floor of the National Democratic Convention continues in a moment. On the floor of the convention in Madison Square Garden, all the talk, as you expect, would be is about Governor Mayor Cuomo's nominating speech tonight for Bill Clinton. There's other good news for Bill Clinton, and Bob Schieffer on the podium has more about that. Bob?
Oh, thank you, Dan. As we went on the air, we were saying that some polling CBS News has been doing this week shows that this convention is beginning to work for Governor Clinton, creating the impression outside this hall, changing the impression of Bill Clinton outside this hall. We now have a moment if we can give you some of those numbers. Look at these figures. 3 weeks ago, Bill Clinton had an unfavorable rating of 40%, and it had been that way for months. Last week, that dipped down to 31%, and since this convention has been on this week, according to our new polling, it has shrunk to 24%. Now, that is just a part of it. His favorable rating, which was at 16% in June, rose to 20% last week and then jumped to 29% this week. So for the first time since March, Bill Clinton's favorable rating is running higher than his unfavorable rating. There's some more good news in the poll for Clinton. Only 40% looked on him as a strong leader last week. Since the convention began this week, that percentage has risen to 60%. And he is now looked on as the candidate who can best bring about change. 41% felt that way about him last week, compared to 30% who see Perot as the candidate of change, and now only 15% feel that way about George Bush. I should say this week, 41% now see Bill Clinton as a candidate of change. As you and I know, Dan, polls can change overnight, but it is hard to see how the numbers they're getting tonight could be any better than for Bill Clinton than what his people are seeing tonight.
Well, Bob, thanks. I'm glad you put that last part in, because at the very best, a poll is simply a snapshot of that particular moment in any political campaign. But to give additional context and perspective to this, let's go way up there to our CBS News booth, way off the floor, to our consultants Kevin Phillips and Joe Klein. Kevin Phillips, stand off, get the wide shot, take a look at the convention as a whole, the latest information from the polls. What's the news for George Bush?
I think the news for George Bush from this convention is bad news. This is the first convention that we've seen taking place during a Republican presidency with a Republican incumbent where the Democrats really smell victory. They didn't in the middle of the Eisenhower administration. They didn't in the middle of the Nixon administration. They didn't in the middle of the Reagan administration. But with George Bush, they smell it. What you see here is the sense that the Change Coalition is coming together, and it's coming together, it looks now, for Bill Clinton, not for Ross Perot, and that this is something. George Bush became a change candidate, he said he was back in 1988. Before, he was an incumbent. Now he has to somehow, and I don't think he can do it, become a change candidate as an incumbent. And that's why Bill Clinton is in so much a stronger position than Dukakis was, as Dukakis seemed to have it. Clinton has it in a different context where he can become the change candidate.
Thanks, Kevin. And Joe Klein, come into this now. Perot looks to be in at least a stasis for the moment, if indeed not dropping back. How does what's happening in Perot's camp today, this Ed Rollins leaving, fit into all of this? And is this simply a mirage for Bill Clinton, this idea that, well, maybe the scent of victory is in the air?
Well, I'll tell you, the news from the Perot camp today certainly isn't good. It makes him seem less professional, less credible, less a trusted candidate. But the important thing is this mirage question. People say 4 years ago Michael Dukakis was ahead by 17 points and that evaporated. Bill Clinton, in some two-way polling now, is ahead of George Bush by more than 10 points. There's a difference, though. Michael Dukakis was a conscientious objector after his convention. He wanted to make policy, not war. Bill Clinton is ready to go to war. His people are loaded for bear, and one indication of it was last week. The governor of Massachusetts, a Republican rising star, William Weld, went down to Little Rock to blast Bill Clinton at a press conference. The Clinton people were ready for him. They had 8 problems that Bill Weld had in Massachusetts. They had people there to refute Weld's arguments. Clinton weighed in with a soundbite himself, and Weld went home with his tail between his legs. A Bush campaign worker said to me, "I don't know how we're going to get other governors out there to be surrogates for us." The other thing is this. A member of the Clinton advertising team said, "Please, please, we're waiting for George Bush to come up with a negative advertisement. We want to go right back at him." It's going to be a different year this year for that reason, because of the economic themes that Mario Cuomo raised. And let me make one other point. I've known Cuomo for more than 10 years. I've heard a lot of those themes that he raised tonight. They always work. We always knew that Mario Cuomo was a great orator, but he proved something else tonight that we didn't know about him before. He was a good soldier.
Thanks, Joe Klein and Kevin Phillips. We'll come back to you later on in the evening. The roll call for the nomination for President of the United States is about to begin. We'll take a break and be back here with you.